Hello out there, and welcome to the No Shit Cast, the flagship podcast of the X Factory Creative Network. I'm your host, Matt Frazier. Tonight's guest, Mr. Brian Stewart, the creative power behind DJversion666, composing industrial music of various subgenres ranging from goth to industrial metal and everything in between. He also has DJed at various venues ranging from gentlemen's clubs in the state of New Jersey to industrial dance clubs such as Mojo 13, Asylum 13, and Solid State in Wilmington, Delaware, and he's our guest on the show. My co-host for this evening, my fellow intellectual caveman and gray wizard of history himself, Mr. Eric D. Smith. How we doing tonight, Eric?
Pretty good, Matt. How are you?
I am living the dream, my friend. Not a lot going on with housekeeping this week. We're still driving through to that March 1st launch date for the website.
Yeah.
And working with the X Factory and with Tangent over there and still keeping that moving forward. What do we got for guests coming up there, Mr. Smith?
Well, on the 17th, we have Professor Cooperman, who is going to come and talk with us about playwriting and his theater activities. And on the 24th, we have Skip Williams. And on the 3rd of March, we have Muggsy from Australia. And on the 10th, we're going to have Dan Cross. We're going to talk about his writing, his game design, and his music. And then on the 24th, we have Dr. Young, who is going to come and talk with us about the history of rock and roll and music theory.
Awesome stuff, man. Well, okay, let's get right to it. So our guest tonight again is Mr. Brian Stewart of DJversion666. How you doing tonight, Brian?
Doing pretty good. Well, I'm getting over the what's going to be known as that fucking flu of 2018.
You survived that?
Yeah, I'm on the recovery side of that.
Oh my God! Yeah, I mean that's killing people. They've got surge tents outside of hospitals and stuff.
Yeah, it's freaking insane right now. My God,
it's a killer.
Yeah, man. How long did it take you to get to this point? Because you sound pretty good now.
Well, I've been hitting the Mucinex and stacking ibuprofen with that and drinking nothing but water, not eating anything.
Yeah.
So, I was able to get to this point in about 6 days.
Wow, that's not bad, man.
Yeah, I forced myself to get better.
I hear it's a hell of a diet. Yeah, it's a great way to lose weight, right?
Dude, I lost 10 pounds.
Wow. Damn.
It's nuts.
Well, I'm glad that you're healthy and with us today. I appreciate your time.
I'm happy to be here.
So, Brian, take some time here and kind of in your own words, kind of tell us what your art form is in layman's terms.
My art form. Well, I'm a musician. I've been playing music since I was probably 10. But it's come full circle, and I think I've settled into the electronic industrial genre with hints of goth. You can't escape your past.
Before you were 10, was music something that was in your household very often? Did you have musicians in the families or anything like that? Or
well, my grandfather was a musician. He was a vocalist. He had a great baritone voice and played piano.
Oh wow.
And yeah, I kind of picked it up from him, I guess you could say. My dad can't hold a tune to save his life. He jokes that he played triangle in the band. So, yeah, there wasn't much going on there. And my mom wasn't really much of a music person either.
Did you have it, though, like in your life? I mean, did they play records a lot or anything like that? Or did you guys have radio going a lot? Anything like that?
No, that was me. My dad used to listen to Prairie Home Companion all the time. But, myself, I think I just found music. I think this is going to sound really weird, but when I was a kid, probably 4 or 5 years old, maybe, I saw Casey and the Sunshine Band perform on TV.
Okay.
And I thought, man, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Watching the crowd go nuts for this band on stage, and they were having a good time and just making music, and I was like, man. So yeah, Casey and the Sunshine Band was my kickoff.
That's cool.
That's a happening band, man. I'm sorry, I admit it. I like Casey and the Sunshine Band. Do a little dance, make a little love.
Very funky.
Get down tonight. Yeah.
I remember that. And they've been around for a long time too. I mean, I remember that from my childhood too. Yep. It was like on KTEL Records and stuff.
Right.
And, oh God, KTEL.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that's something that sticks with you. So you basically you seen that, and that was what sparked your interest in it initially, right?
That made me want to be a musician. That made me want to be a performing musician.
Yeah, they presented as a big band too, right? When you saw them, you must have saw them with a full brass section and the whole 9 yards.
Yep.
Yeah. That's definitely, you're right, they were definitely an entertaining group to watch. There's like 23 people on stage.
Yeah.
And you saying that when you got to be 10, that's when you started to really embrace music?
Yeah, I started out on alto saxophone.
Okay.
And then a year later, I started playing piano. And then I was kind of serious about the piano, half-hearted about the saxophone. Then I got to high school, and that's when things changed. I was no longer interested in any kind of sports or anything like that. I used to play baseball when I was in grade school, things like that.
Uh-huh.
But man, once I got to high school, music was it. And I started actually paying attention to the teachers. That was something it was a novel approach.
Yeah.
And, and then I believe, let's see, my freshman year, I started playing piano at a Sunday buffet. I was 14. And I thought that was kind of weird, playing in front of a bunch of old people. Letting a 14-year-old choose the music for a Sunday buffet.
And what did you choose?
Well, I obviously, stuck with the standard Brahms, Bach, Beethoven, the stuff that everybody loves. But then you also had Fire. You also had the theme from Star Wars.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Don't ask a 14-year-old to choose the music.
Sure.
He's not going to be able to read the crowd.
Hey, well, I mean, those are still good selections, man. They're not bad selections.
But I'm pretty sure they're not Sunday buffet material.
No, maybe not. No.
Looking back. But I got paid for it, and so that was kind of cool.
Oh, cool. How much did you get paid?
I think I was making $4 an hour.
Oh, that's still cool, though. That's like your first professional gig, is it?
It really was.
Wow.
Yes.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
I mean, because I can remember starting to have that same interest in music around like 10 or 11 too. I was gonna ask you a question about that.
Well, it sounds like you're classic. You got a classical training then, Brian. Is that?
Yeah, well, let's see. My sophomore year of high school, I picked up the bass, and I never let it down. That became my principal instrument. I love the bass, upright, 4-string, electric, everything. I love the bass. It just felt right. And then I think I was in every type of musical course available in high school. You had your band, orchestra, jazz band, all city band, orchestra, and jazz band. I was playing in all of that. And the choir director at the high school also asked me if I'd play bass for them. I'd get an easy A in choir. Never had to sing, not one.
Wow, that's cool though. So you really embraced it there too, in every way. That was a great outlet, I imagine.
Yeah. And then senior year, I decided I was going to apply to music colleges. I applied to one in Chicago, one in New York, and of course Berkeley and Boston. Berkeley is the one that I chose to go with.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I poured my heart into getting in there too.
That was one of the great things of living up in the New England area, was going into Boston and seeing the buskers and stuff, because those guys were just phenomenal. Good Lord.
Well, I'm originally from Southern Indiana, so the prospect of going to Boston was a dream.
I'll bet. Yeah, it's a fun town too.
Yeah. Too fun, actually.
Yeah, it can be. Yep.
Get into a lot of trouble in Boston.
If you're looking for it, you can find it. Yeah, it's there.
You don't even really have to look for it. They'll find you.
Sounds like an album title, Trouble in Boston.
I may have had some drunken nights in Boston. Yes,
yeah.
Many.
So, in your high school years, when all of this was really starting to come into focus and stuff for you, what did you listen to? What bands or people or even genres of music that you prefer?
Oh man. Well, back then I would say the 80s pop. I'm talking like, when I say pop, I'm talking like Depeche Mode. Even though technically they were like, I don't know, they were like easy goth, the goth that everybody could listen to.
Gotcha.
But like, Simple Minds was huge for me. Falco.
Oh yeah.
But things like that, and then I also had a lot of influence from like metal bands. I was very, very influenced by a lot of metal bands back then as well. But then when I was getting on the plane to go to Boston for the very first time, I picked up a music magazine in the their store or whatever, and inside there was just a little blurb on a band called The Damned, and that shaped me. That pointed me in the direction I wanted to go. The Damned is an amazing band that has gone through several changes. They started out kind of punk, and then they went into more of a goth phase. And they even went into a rockabilly phase later on.
Oh, wow. That's different.
Yeah, they've evolved so much.
It's a strange evolution, too. Unusual evolution, I should say, right?
But they pulled it off.
Now, did they pull that off as staying the same members? Or is that what was the impetus of their change? Was it that they had different members?
The lead singer has always been the same. The guitarist has been off and on since day one, and he's back on again. The drummer had been through it for the most part up until fairly recently. They've gone through countless bassists. I think that was their biggest change, and they've gone through a couple guitar players. But for the most part, it stayed the same. And that's been going on since I think they started in 1977.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, and they're still touring, so.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's a long span. I mean, not a lot of bands. Are they still releasing the albums?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. What was it about that article or that band that caught your eye? I mean, like, what was it? Like, you said that changed your entire direction. I mean, up until that point in time, you sound like.
Well, I think he said it influenced him.
Well, did it influence you, or did it?
It really heavily influenced me. It didn't so much change me because I was always into goth. I loved Bauhaus. I loved, Dead Kennedys. I loved punk back then.
Mm-hmm.
The good stuff. I'm not talking about like Green Day on forward. I'm talking about
right.
communities and
I love Bauhaus, Peter Murphy, and Falco too. I got to see Peter Murphy at the Odeon in Ohio, at the Odeon in Cleveland.
Jane's Addiction, Butthole Surfers, those. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a genre. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was it then about? Was it Berkeley then, Brian, where it started to come together for you then as sort of a complete package?
That's where it started. I would say that at that point, I started hitting my goth phase really hard. The guy liner, everything, the trench coat. Oh yeah.
And probably found a bit of more people sort of inclined that way in Boston than you would find in Southern Indiana, right?
Exactly. I mean, in the Midwest, there is a goth scene. There is a goth punk underground scene, but the size difference in the scene there versus the scene in Boston was just it was overwhelming.
Wow. So
all of these counterculture scenes, though, anytime you can get to a big city, that seems to be where the going back to Blondie, right? All those influences were sort of culminating, but they were doing it. That was New York City, I think.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember right. Okay, so getting out of there might be a goth sort of group in the Midwest, but the chances of them also being people that are writing music and all of this other stuff are a lot better in a major metropolitan center, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's why I love New York. I love Philly. I love Newark, even Trenton. We've been doing a once a month event at Champs in Trenton that it's a goth night. And so we're trying to build the scene there too. Because there are a lot of people there, but they end up going to other places because there's nothing in Trenton.
New Jersey, sure.
Yeah.
So what do you think? I mean, this is a scene, man, that's been around for a long time, right? As a subculture, as its own genre, right. It's been around for a while, like 2 decades, I would say, at least 20 years. So what is it that you think keeps it it probably will never see a pop emergence, right? Because that would be kind of counter to what it's all about anyway. So
definitely.
So for it to get mainstream acceptance would almost be the death of it, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes and no. I think what would happen is if parts of it became popular, those parts would end up getting cut off and become pop music instead of goth music. A lot of people look at like Evanescence as having a slightly goth feel to it.
Yeah, I've heard that for sure.
Pop. It's but there's influence there. You can feel it, but it's not goth. I think that's what happens to goth that becomes popular. Is it kind of fizzles. It doesn't make it. It can't survive. It needs the underground scene.
Yeah, it's kind of what it's all about, right? Is the being the outcast kind of thing. So it's got to find its own audience, sort of, but it's got to be like almost quiet and for it to even exist.
Well, I think what it is the audience seeks out.
Well, that's what's going to happen, really, isn't it? Because once it becomes too popular, that group is going to cast that out, and something else is going to take its place.
Exactly. You look at a lot of people in the scene, and a lot of people love 9 Inch Nails. A lot of people don't like 9 Inch Nails. It's definitely an industrial band, but is it because they became popular? I really don't know, but I like Nine Inch Nails. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
There's a lot to like.
What about other mediums that might popularize that particular culture, that goth culture? Do you personally embrace those kind of things? Like the things I'm thinking of that come to mind is a lot of people I know that embrace goth culture also are gamers that play games like White Wolf and stuff like that, and those are really popular, and a lot of people are really into them and things like that. And do you see that as something that emphasizes what that culture stands for, or do you see it as something that popularizes what that culture stands for?
That's a tough question. I never really thought about it, but you're right. Like, everybody I know plays Dungeons and Dragons or White Wolf or Vampire the Masquerade, or I think we're drawn to those that type of thing.
Yeah, that sort of thing that can work as a vehicle to manifest feelings and art and desire in that metaphysical way.
Exactly.
Right on. Okay. So I mean, I guess in that case, it's a boon, right? Because in that way, you can introduce other people to the more popular and interesting and romantic aesthetics of the Gothic culture.
If they're accepting of it. If they're not accepting of it, they're not going to want to hear it.
Sure.
They're going to look at games like Dungeons and Dragons as nerd games.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
I've got the Dungeons and Dragons books from first edition on to fifth edition. So
very nice.
Yeah, and I don't even play anymore, but I've got them.
And that's the important part, because if you want to get back into playing them, you can.
I would love to.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you know about me or not, but I'm a big fan of Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, and play pretty regularly. So
I kind of had a feeling that somebody did, because of the Tunnels and Trolls interview, and you're getting ready to interview Dan Cross.
Yeah,
he's a good friend of mine. He's a great person.
Yeah, he is. He really is, man.
Yeah, it definitely seems to be a theme there.
Yeah. Yeah, Dan's a good guy. He's autographed some books that I sent him in the mail, and then he sent me back a bunch of other stuff. It was really cool, and yeah, I talk with him pretty frequently. And
all of these guys have just been phenomenal. I don't know, Brian, but and this is Brian's interview, so we won't go through too much of it, but we've interviewed several guys from this genre, so authors and things like that, and they've been all just amazingly gracious people.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, when we were talking earlier about bands and stuff that you'd listened to at the time that you didn't really get into at that, this is like when you were in Berkeley and stuff. Yeah, you didn't get into the pop side of the 80s that much, right? As close as you kind of came to that was something like maybe Falco or Depeche Mode, right?
Yeah, see, that kind of pop was for me, that was, I did like Simple Minds. Their song, the album that had Alive and Kicking on it.
Right on. Great song.
Amazing album. The whole album was amazing. But yeah, I guess most of the pop, no, I really wasn't into. It had more of that darker electronic feel for the most part.
When you started writing the type of music that you're writing currently, and you said you kind of settled into this area that you're into now, like, what was it that firmly put you there, that you knew that that you wanted to stay in this genre for a while to express yourself? I mean, was it more than the attachment of this type of music to the Gothic culture?
It just felt right. I started, in fact, you've probably heard a couple of my songs already.
Oh yeah.
Happy Goodbye World and Future Gods were all written back in 2002.
Okay.
I re-recorded them for this album. But yeah, those songs I've had since 2002.
Wow.
And yeah, they stood the test of time for me at least. And that's just that's where I want to be. That's where I'm comfortable, is writing music like that.
What sort of equipment are you using?
I use
or software.
okay. This is going to be quite a list. My keyboard, I use a Kurzweil K2000. It's an old dinosaur from the 90s, but it still works, and it's a beaut. And if you talk to anybody who loves synthesizers, they will tell you the Kurzweil K2000 is amazing.
Oh yeah,
amazing.
They're excellent.
But at the same time, I'm not gonna lie, I'm using a lot of soft synths, a lot of software synths.
Cool, good.
Yeah, some of the new samples are just amazing anyway. Good God, you can't even tell.
What do you use? I'm curious as to the soft synths and stuff, because I mean, I really feel that's the future of music, and you know,
it doesn't seem to be going that way. It's just a lot easier. First of all, I've turned one keyboard into
20
several.
Yeah.
And so that in itself is like, you know, I only need my one keyboard from the 1990s to be able to sound like today's synthesizers. Cool. I use Ardour as my my recording software.
Ardour.
It's an open source DAW that it's on par with anything that's out there today that anybody else is using. And being I'm on Linux, you know, it's the best thing on Linux in my opinion as far as recording goes. And yeah, all my soft synths are loaded into that DAW, so I'd actually have to go in and try to figure out, try to tell you from there which ones I use, because off the top of my head, I can't remember.
Right? Yeah.
Is there a large music presence on Linux OS?
No, I would like for there to be, because it's easier to control the latency, for me at least, with Linux, because I've loaded a low latency kernel into my Linux kernel, and I'm able to actually adjust the latency. I wasn't able to do that when I used Windows many years ago.
Yeah.
And so that made a world of difference to me, to be able to.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. Especially if you're using any kind of plugins, soft synths, or anything like that, and you're using
anything
controller, yeah.
When you were at Berkeley, I imagine at that time everybody was probably using Mac, right? And GarageBand?
No.
Really?
We were using Tascam 4-tracks.
Oh.
Oh, my word.
Yeah. This is going back, but yeah, we didn't mess around with computers back then. We were using the old tapes and record that way.
Wow. Yeah, you can only use them so many times, right? And they just deteriorated, and they were pretty much shot.
I don't miss that at all. I'm so glad that the future has happened. That's all.
Do you find, though, that being classically trained is a benefit to you over people who don't actually understand music theory but are still making electronic? Because there's a lot of that now, right? People making electronic music because anybody can do it. So you get a lot of this really experimental stuff, but it really doesn't follow any kind of music theory at all. When you listen to it, it's like, oh, that's neat, but that's not really music per se. Right. But do you find that being classically trained and actually knowing how to play these instruments, woodwinds and stringed instruments and things like that, gives you a benefit or an advantage over, let's say that you didn't have that experience and training?
In a word, yes. The reason I say that is simply because of music theory. You need to know music theory. You have to. It is the end-all, be-all of writing music. If you don't have music theory under your belt, you're not going to be able to produce what you could produce.
Or it'll be an accident when you do it. That's the thing, right?
Yeah, it'd be a fluke.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're going to put you in the category of, hey, kids, if you're going to make electronic music of any kind, you need to take the time to watch 6 or 7 YouTube videos and at least get a basic understanding of music theory, right?
At least that, yeah. I mean, the more the better.
Exactly. When I was preparing to go to Berkeley, I had a private saxophone instructor, a private bass instructor, and 2 private music theory instructors.
Wow. You were vested.
I wasn't gonna I was gonna go in there knowing some shit. So
right.
That was my goal.
That's great, man. I was talking with Professor Young. He teaches music theory and history of rock and roll at the university here in Ohio University. And that's one of the things we were talking about. He was people having grit, doing what was needed to be done to actually be a musician. It's because it's not like, I mean, and Matt has talked about this before. It's not like you're just born with talent and it doesn't take any work.
Exactly. You can't just dress the part and suddenly call yourself a musician.
Right.
Well, and a lot of people look at, when someone is an accomplished musician, a lot of people will look at that and say, oh, well, I wish I had that kind of talent. And I don't know about you, man. To me, because I play lead guitar, and I've had people, and it's almost dismissive of like, dude, I did this for 2 to 3 hours a day for 2 years straight to get to where I'm at. I didn't just wake up one day and the gods blessed me with some sort of talent. There's an effort that goes into this, and I don't think it's beyond anybody personally. I think it's just down to the individual. How bad do you want it, and do you want to put the grit into it? If you do, you'll get it. It's just the way it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree, because like I couldn't tell you the amount of time I've spent in practice rooms.
Right.
Still shredding away for hours on end.
Yeah.
That's what you do. If you want to get good, you've got to.
It's a grind. So embrace the suck if you want it and grind it out. That's how it's done. I mean,
that's just it. To me, there's no suck to it.
Oh, I mean, for people that, there's a suck when you learn how to play bass. Your fingers hurt for a while until you get conditioned, right? That's the suck I'm talking about.
Okay. Well, yeah. Your fingers are gonna get ripped up.
Yep. It's just part of the process, know, and you've got to hurt for it. And I think once you do, number one, you gain an appreciation. So it's something you're never going to stop doing for the rest of your life. You're always going to be a musician.
Even if you try to walk away from it, it's going to come chasing you down.
Oh, sure. It'll find you. Right.
Because that's kind of actually what happened to me with my music. Like I had said, I'd written those 3 songs back in 2002. And then fast forward, around 2003, I had some issues with a stalker.
Oh, God. A goth stalker?
It was a nightmare.
Literally, huh?
It was scary enough that it made me try to give up music.
Wow.
And but it was a few years ago that I've been DJing forever, probably 17 years now. I made a mix that included a song from a project called Exemia. I put the mix online on like Mixcloud or something like that, and I posted it, and I tagged all the all the artists that were in the mix. And the guy behind the project, Exemia, contacted me and had listened to a bunch of stuff that I threw on SoundCloud years ago and forgot about. And he asked me if I wanted to redo the song Goodbye World. And that's what got me started again.
Wow, that's cool. So, because I know you had alluded to that. I mean, I was reading, on your website that you were alluding to that it had come back, and I wasn't sure exactly what that meant, and that's interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
It was it's been weird, but yeah, you think you can put away something and it comes right back at you.
And you probably feel like you should seize this while the momentum's coming at you, right?
Yeah. I'm having fun with it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. We one song at a time, re-recording 3 songs that were on my SoundCloud.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. Is it possible that someone that went to Berkeley might have been a little bit ahead of his time and the genre is catching up? Did you ever consider that?
I never really thought about it, to be honest.
Because I find, in the tracks that I've listened to, and I try not to go overboard because I like to sort of experience it with the artist as much as I can. Eric's the one that goes and pre-listens to everything like all the way through. But I find your stuff to be extremely progressive, in a word. And I hope you don't take that as a bad thing, but I really like it. It's edgy.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know necessarily that I was ahead of my time or whatever. In fact, honestly, those 3 songs and a lot of my songs that I even write currently have more of that 90s post-industrial feel to it.
Yes.
So, but the fact that people still like that, that's cool.
Yeah.
Because that's what I like. I feel like a lot of today's industrial music sounds the same.
It's
the same beat. It's the same feel.
There was so much good, and I don't know what happened with that either, because there was so much good stuff, and there were in the '90s that you were talking about, that industrial scene.
Exactly.
And then, man, when did it happen, Brian? When was somebody flipped the switch, and it just had to be all commercial? It was probably with Napster and all of that. And all that kind of stuff. What are you saying over there?
I was just thinking probably grunge.
No. Well, that probably had something to do with it. But no, I think when it all went to shit, because the record labels basically became extremely paranoid, and they just stopped producing anything unless it was something that was commercially appetizing, and then that was it.
Certainly
right?
in the pop realm, it was definitely that way.
But I think that's what happened to there was a bunch of musical genres, and I think that industrial scene in the 90s, which was really just getting cranking, then it just sort of disappeared off it was gone.
I think
at least that was my feeling.
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of the musicians that were doing the 90s industrial feel just kind of, I don't know. I mean, 9 Inch Nails is still putting music out.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest with you, I didn't like the last album. A lot of people did, but I think it was poorly produced. I don't know who's to blame there. I think they just kind of threw something out.
He was wrapped up in that whole scene with Jimmy Iommi, right? Mm-hmm. Which was, what was that? Snoop Dogg and Eminem and Dr. Dre and that 9 Inch Nails first Trent Reznor album was on that label, if I remember right. So, man, that label hit where there was nothing they couldn't put out that wasn't going to go nuts. Right. They were just so freaking successful, and I think he just kind of caught. I shouldn't say, I'm not taking anything away from Trent Reznor or 9 Inch Nails. I'm not saying that. Right. I think it was really beneficial to the industrial music scene that he picked that label is what I'm getting at. Okay, I think he was a good businessman and he was smart about it. That's what I'm trying to say. Shit, I don't want to be talking down because I find his music amazing. I'm with you, Brian. It's good, you know. But that whole scene, like I said, just kind of dried up around 95 or something like that. It just seemed to like disappear.
2001, 2002, right around the time that I had produced my original.
Oh, great.
my music, that was about the time it started dropping out. I was like, yeah, what's going on? You had Rob Zombie,
yeah,
but he started going more guitar rock toward that. Then 9 Inch Nails started dropping out. Marilyn Manson started going, you know, claiming rock is dead. He went off and did work with Smashing Pumpkins. It was just, I don't know. I think that industrial music at that time didn't know which direction to go. I think that's what happened.
That's possible. There was a lot of technology coming on the scene there too, especially with the things that we had been talking about with DAWs and soft synths and plugins. So there was a lot to be done.
Is it possible that, because when you think about electronic music, you think EDM and house and all of this kind of stuff, that it sort of just kind of got supplanted because of the demand for all of this other stuff
by a larger genre, maybe?
Yeah, like it sort of, because they certainly rely on very much the same platforms. Or am I wrong about that, Brian? I mean, the music share a lot of the way they're written, produced, recorded, EDM and that kind of stuff, and industrial music both share some roots there.
They do in a sense, especially lately. Back then, you had a lot of industrial rock that also had bass and guitar, and you know they had their drummer. There was a full band there, but it was still industrial music. They were still, you know, they had the backing tracks and they had the keyboards and everything.
Right.
Everything back from industrial, but there was a full band. These days. It hurts really that to see a lot of industrial acts that have basically been chipped down to a singer and a keyboardist, or you know,
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's just like, I don't know. It's not happening. It's not happening the way it used to, but everybody seems satisfied with that, and that kind of sucks.
You know, I remember, an anecdotal story here, but sort of relevant. I was on a business trip one time, and we were staying down in Florida at one of the Disney hotels for this business trip, and we were walking to that downtown Disney place that you can go to. It's like, you know, Disney for drunk adults. And so we went through, and I heard this guy singing, right? And I looked over, and I saw this guy sitting in a bar that's in this area, and he had a like a cabinet on wheels with him with electronics and stuff in it, and he's sitting there with an acoustic guitar and a microphone, and he's just like playing, but he has like a full band behind him, and of course he was playing to a backing track, right? So that's where I first saw this happen. Right. And I thought, man, that's freaking awesome, because, you know, as an artist, especially if you want to perform, man, you know this, Brian, getting a group of dudes or any group of people together on a consistent basis, both for practice and for performance, is like herding cats to a fucking bath.
Or gaming, or just
or
about
anything.
Yeah, anything.
Especially today, because everybody's so damn distracted by everything, you know. So, but back then I remember watching that and going, wow, man, that's really awesome. And now I look at it and go, Jesus Christ, that just like killed everything, because nobody needs a band anymore, you know, at all. And
see, honestly, and I've been told this, and, you know, I've even been told to give it a shot. You know, I don't need a band. I could play backing tracks.
Yeah. But it loses something, don't you think? It definitely. Well, going full circle back to what you were saying, one of your influences was Casey and the Sunshine Band. Them cats put like 23 people on stage.
Exactly. And yeah, you're right. I have not had a band together. I got a couple of guys to play with me once at QXT's. I've had one show under the name DJversion666 as a performer and not a DJ.
Right.
And unless something comes up where I'm just like, okay, I've got to play this, I'll find musicians then. But I can't seem to find musicians to play with. Everybody's got their own projects or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, because everyone's got a recording studio in their house or in their laptop now. So
exactly.
I think there's positive aspects to that too, though. I mean, I think that for one thing, it allows a lot of diverse creativity if everybody has their own project. And I think for certain genres of music, that the idea of everything being in the box is better than it is having live people play. I mean, certainly with most electronic music, it's better that way. I mean, not that I haven't seen bands who are heavily electronic perform on stage,
Right.
like say for instance, Information Society or Art of Noise, right? And they do a good job on stage and stuff too. But I'd rather hear that type of music done with, in studio with soft synths and stuff like that, than I would to hear it done with a bunch of performers and analog equipment and things like that. Now, that being said, other types of music, I would not like it like that.
Well, what we're talking about here, and it's evidenced by what's his Dead Mouse. The guy puts a big helmet on with giant ears on stage. Why is he doing that? Why has he got this incredible light show that goes crazy on his stage, and he's up there rocking as a DJ? He's doing all that because he's the only person on stage. He's it. And he's got to carry that entire audience with electronic music. So how's he do it? The whole show the stage becomes part of the show. Mm-hmm. And I think that the reason that that's happening, and it has to happen for a live show, is because there's no performers. I'm sorry. There's a lot less performers. So there's a lot less for the audience to connect to. So you got to make it up in other ways, by putting a helmet on with ears on it, or crazy pyrotechnics or something like that. So that when someone says, I'm going to a live event, I'm going to go see an experience. Mm. Well, okay, if there's one guy up there pushing buttons and dancing, that is an experience, but it's not the same as having 23 people in a full brass section and all this kind of stuff moving around either.
Maybe.
Well, no, that's kind of how I see it too, because like I could go up there, I could go onto a stage, and I could basically sing karaoke with my songs. Okay?
Exactly.
But honestly, I would much rather have performing musicians up there with me and us having fun as a band. But it seems that day and age is over.
It is hard to achieve, no matter which end you like or come from. It is getting harder to achieve.
Yeah, but I know people that do it and do it well.
Yeah,
look at Exemia, for example. When he does his live shows, and he brings the house down with what he does. If you look at Stoneburner, his there's a contraption. He is a one-man band. It's incredible to watch him do what he does on stage by himself. But most people don't have that kind of setup, I guess.
Yeah.
Where you walk on a stage and you've got like this huge contraption with keyboards and drums and things all hooked up to it, and everything is like set to everything's triggered, where you hit like I think he's got like some piece of metal that's got a trigger on it that sounds like a gong. And, just incredible. But you don't those are their things. If you can't come up with something like that on your own, you're stuck singing karaoke.
Yeah, and I'm not and certainly I'm not coming off this way. I'm not saying that putting musicians on stage is the only way you can connect to an audience. I'm not saying that at all, right? Because obviously that would be wrong. Look at Sacrilege and all these people that are out here doing this. Okay, so you can't say that. There is other ways to do it, but I think those other ways are happening because there's less musicians on stage now, so they have to find other ways just to connect with the audience. And either that's in the show of like what you're talking about, Brian's like the instrumentation itself and the way it's set up, and just watching this guys is an adventure kind of thing, right? So there's an entertainment quality to that.
Yeah, exactly, and it takes some special planning to be able to put something like that together.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because basically, when I did the show at QXT's, yeah, I'm a DJ. I ran my backing tracks off of my DJ software. I was running it off the DJ software. I had a keyboardist, I had a guitarist, and there was me, and I was just I had my DJ controller on stage with me, hitting those buttons and getting the songs going.
What controller do you use?
I use an old Hercules remix, a Hercules DJ remix controller.
Huh, cool.
Yeah, it's a little toughy. It's taken some beatings over the years, but
so it survives.
Yeah.
Hey, I have some tracks here of yours, and I would like to play a little bit of a couple of them and have you tell me something about that track, if you would.
Sure.
These are ones that I particularly liked.
That was Valentine. Yeah. That was actually, I wrote that for a specific reason, actually. Getting into Berkeley, I got my biggest scholarships, actually several scholarships, came from me playing a song called My Funny Valentine on the saxophone. Most of my scholarships actually came from that one song.
Huh.
And if you notice in that part with the piano being kind of over a very slow melodic part.
Yep.
Slow melodic part is My Funny Valentine.
Huh.
Just like a piece of it. So that's kind of like, that song is kind of like the story of my becoming a real musician.
Really? Really?
It's kind of ironic you picked that one first.
So okay. You know what it means to me? Like what I get in my head when I hear it?
What's that?
I get like images from like the original Max Headroom movie.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
You know what I'm talking about? Like I get like weird post-apocalyptic images that are not completely depressive, but sort of like that movie was, where like there was a certain like, yep, this is the way it is, let's get on with business sort of a thing, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like a cross between that and a Brad Fidel. You know who he is?
No.
He's the guy that did the music for Terminator.
Oh.
So it's kind of like a cross between that.
I definitely got a very cinematic feel from that as well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
it's the best stuff because it tells it tells
gives
a picture.
images.
Yeah, it gives you imagery in your
Yeah.
mind when you listen to it. You relate to it. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that particular song's a favorite of mine, and I think a few people actually have mentioned that they really like that song.
And it has a nice dichotomy. There's a beginning part of it that's distinctly different from the secondary part of it, and so I like that in music.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it did. It just felt good.
Yeah, it did. I agree. Okay.
I heard that Dead Mouse in an interview one time. No, it's for that master class. Have you seen that? The master class stuff?
I've seen the commercials.
Anyway, he said, you can't just have I'm going to paraphrase this, a beat and some pad tracks and call it trance music, right? There's got to be more to it than that. It has to have movement, So you got another one queued up over there, Eric?
Yes, I had another one that I liked a lot.
What time signature is that in?
5/4.
Okay, that's I was picking that up. That really gives that an interesting distressing feel to it. Like it's plodding along, but it's very distressing. Yeah, I like how you use that there. That's really interesting.
Yeah, that I wanted to do something with a 5/4 time signature, because my favorite classical song ever is Gustav Holst, Theme from the Planets, Mars.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's in a 5/4 time signature.
Huh.
And that was basically it was the inspiration for the not the rhythm necessarily, but just the time signature itself. That song is so dark.
Yeah.
And that is my absolute favorite song. Would be Gustav Holst's Mars, Theme from the Planets.
Do you often write music this way, where you think of an older piece and think, I'm going to use that as a theme, and then create from there?
No, not really.
and I'm making an assumption here that you did that this time, and maybe I shouldn't be doing that. You're just saying that particular piece was the sort of the inspiration just for the time signature, right?
Nah, actually, I think what happened with this song was I was talking to again the guy behind the project of Exemia. His name is Fabian. He's from Tijuana.
You said Tijuana, Mexico? Tijuana?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll just call him Fabian from now on.
Okay.
He's the one that does all my post-production on all my music. But he and I were talking one day about doing songs, and I said, man, I think I want to do a song in 5/4. And he said, go for it. And, that, I guess it was because of Mars, Theme from the Planets, that I wanted to do something in 5/4 time signature. But nonetheless, it doesn't sound anything like Mars, thankfully.
Right. But it definitely carries that sort of menacing feel to it because of the time signature. You definitely, you exploited it brilliantly in that track. But it's funny how, again, this goes back to, like you said, man, theory is important. And why is it important? Because you know these kinds of things. Otherwise, you just sort of happen upon them by accident.
Exactly. Nobody's going to come across 5/4 time signatures by accident.
Yeah.
It's going to So, yeah, that's something, you have to study. You have to practice. You have to learn.
And I think it pays off, man. I mean, you can tell in the architecture of your music that, you think deeply about it, like you've got things combined. Some of it's unique, that's obvious, like that, the time signature and stuff, but there's all sorts of little interesting things throughout.
True.
Like textures.
And a lot of the textures and things that you're hearing, that is just stuff that, I think about and I'm like, okay, this would sound really cool here. But I'm not going to lie. Fabian, when he does post-production, he'll tweak some things here and there and make some, he chips away at the rough diamond that I hand him and turns it into this beautiful polished piece at the end that I'm just like, man, that doesn't even sound like me.
I got you. Yeah, that's important to be able to work with that post-production aspect because it makes a huge difference to what you're doing. I mean, certainly there's the whole artistic side of the blossom of whatever it is that's manifesting from you, but it's so nice to have a working relationship where you philosophically understand each other, right? And
the trust piece of it, that I'm going to hand this off to you, and when I get it back, I know it's going to be better than anything I could have ever done with it. You know?
Well, when I'm writing a song, that's two sets of ears and one mind.
I got two questions I want to ask you that are in my mind right now. So let me see if I can spit these out. So when you work with Fabian, do you work with? I'm assuming you just work with stem tracks. You give him source tracks, and then he takes each of those individual instrumentation pieces and does whatever he wants to. I'd like you to hear how your process there. Number one, and number two, I would love to get you to kind of elaborate on your creative process. Like when you create a piece, what's your normal start to finish kind of process in doing that?
Dropbox.
So you just take the individual stem tracks themselves and put them over one at a time, and then do you send him like an arrangement?
No, I usually hand him an entire folder of stems for one song.
Okay. So then he's part of the arranging process then, right? Or do you send him sort of an outline with all the pieces in it, and then?
No, a lot of times, like he'll hear something that I've done, and he'll hear something that it could be better with this in this way. That's what I was saying earlier, or getting ready to say was, when I work, that's 2 ears and one mind. But when we work together, that's four ears, two minds. You're going to produce something that much better if you work with a second person. He may hear things that I can't hear.
But it's got to be the right person, though. That's important, right?
Very much so. Yeah, you've got to be on the same wavelength. You've got to be musicians. You've got to go through the grind.
Yeah. So where do you find inspiration for your music? It's very diverse, right? I mean, there's a lot. When you kind of follow through the tracks, it's very, it's obviously of a certain influence, but it's very diverse. So is it something that you hear and say, wow, I want to explore that, or is it multiple things?
Well, it's multiple things. A lot of it can have a lot to do with my emotion. Usually, I bottle stuff up. I do. And when I'm angry, when I'm depressed, when I'm upset, I hold everything in. And I know that's wrong. I know it's not a good thing, but it does help me write music.
And then is music your cathartic release of that?
Yes.
Then you're still getting that release, and that's good.
Yeah.
So pretty much everything you do then, technically speaking, is written from the heart, or with at least some sort of emotional significance to it. Which is strange because I have to admit to you, I have a problem reading emotion and dealing and understanding and just processing emotion. I have Asperger's. I'm high functioning, but I was diagnosed with Asperger's a few years ago, so it was late in life. I just thought it was weird for the longest time, but apparently there was something behind it. People with Asperger's tend to get stuck on a subject. I got lucky and my subject was music. Like a hyper-focus kind of thing? Or obsession kind of thing? Well, what's the difference? Yeah. I know how to think about it. Am I obsessed with music? Yep. But yeah, and so music and computers are my thing. That is my hyper focus.
So when you go to meditate, essentially, you go into the room and you either start creating music or start programming. Do you program or write code or anything like that? Or
I used to. I got out of heavy computer use. I still do stuff for my own personal whatever in Linux, because I was going to say, says the guy running a Linux box, right? I kind of dabble with computers. You have to want to be able to tinker with. Yeah. To really get, I mean, anybody could use Linux these days. I'm not going to lie. Linux has been dumbed down. If you've seen Ubuntu, it's perfect for anybody. But to really get into it and get, open up a born again shell and start typing code, that's something that not everybody wants to do.
I understand.
Yeah, definitely not.
I see it as a means to an end.
I understand. Yeah. Do you on the album, what in your opinion it was the most difficult track to do for any reason? Whether it was difficult to record, or the idea came difficult, or the song got halfway there and it was hard to finish, or just technically challenging, anything that you were playing that was difficult to play that you were proud that you pulled off, or anything like that?
I think the piano part, the solo in Valentine, was particularly difficult. I wouldn't want to try and play that again. And I can honestly tell you, when I did play it, there was some getting in there and shifting notes.
Moving notes, yep.
But yeah, anything that I play, I won't, if I can't play it by hand, I won't record it. I don't know. That's me, though. I'm not saying that everybody has to do that.
But that's what makes you feel like you've given your authentic best.
Yeah, like I actually played it. You know, I didn't just paint out notes or something.
Yeah. On like a step sequencer or something of that nature.
Yeah. Everything that I play. Even if I have to go in and arrange things and push things here and there and nudge things and whatnot, or erase a sour note or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, that's the brilliance of being able to use a DAW is yeah, you can do one run through and just adjust things for the most part. But, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, there's definitely an allure to using DAWs versus just recording on tape, because of that ability to kind of go in and nudge things here and there and stretch this and fill that in. And, oh, look, that's the way I really meant to play.
Yeah, I really want to go back to a 4-track.
Yeah. For us guitarists, man, I mean, in a lot of ways, they're a bit of a dream come true in that respect. You can go, like you said, oh, shit, that note buzzed. Or I didn't even mean to hit that. The pinky hooked that one, let's take that out. You can do stuff like that. You can get away with it.
Exactly. Now, okay, that's true for the keyboard. But now when I plug my bass in, no, any bass lines that I lay down have to be perfect. I won't accept less. I will run a bass line over and over again until it's the way I want it.
But the nice part about that, though, being a lot of this stuff being repetitive, is you can get it laid down solid once, twice maybe through, and then you just copy paste through the song.
Yeah, I have done that a few times.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
Why is it?
I've run the bass line completely through the song too.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, why is it? Why are you more of a perfectionist with playing the bass?
Like I said, when I started playing the bass in high school in my sophomore year, I realized that was my instrument.
Okay, so it's just the affinity to the instrument that you want it to. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I've played keyboards for a long time, and I am a perfectionist with that. But there are so many easy ways to adjust things with the keyboard that I'm not so concerned with it. I'll play my part, I'll adjust things, I'll move on to another track or another instrument or whatever.
Where do you make? This is the thing that always hangs a lot of artists up, I think, that are doing music this way today, is they never know when to stop tinkering, right? Okay, now obviously you send everything, someone else does your final and mastering, right? Final arrangement and mastering for you, but where is it that you draw that line? Or or let me ask you this, how do you find it?
You have to tell yourself enough is enough. You really do. If you don't cut yourself off at some point, your piece will become muddy.
It's hard, right? I mean, and we talked to Cat Hall a couple of weeks ago, who can put together 23 vocal tracks and pull it off. Okay. But that's very rare, right?
Yeah.
That's sick to be able to do that. But yeah, that's the thing. You know, when do you stop adding instruments? When do you stop adding effects? When do you stop? You know, like where is that line, and how does one find that? Because it's now almost like analysis paralysis. You got so many options, you don't know where to begin or end.
Actually, I kind of do. When I write music, I usually start off with the drum parts. You know, I'll lay out 7 tracks, usually anywhere between 5 and 7 tracks for the drum parts, and I'll go ahead and start recording the drum parts. But from there, once I start adding instrumentation and effects and just little things, that I stopped putting those tracks down once I got them out of my head.
Okay, all right.
Because once I've started a drum beat, I've got the music already going in my head. Whatever that drum beat.
So you're basically saying you don't spend a lot of time fiddling. Once you kind of get it, you're moving on. You're not going to sit there and keep messing with it and messing with it and messing with it.
There are times where it happens. It's you get in a rut, or you get like some kind of block or whatever, and you overdo something or something. It happens. But for the most part, yeah, it's basically I try to get the music that goes on in my head into the computer.
And you've been using this software for a while now, right?
Before Arter, I started using Arter about a year ago.
Okay.
I was using a program called Energy XT, which is cross-platform, but it's not open source. But it ran similar to the old Windows program called Acid Pro.
Mm-hmm, yep. Very familiar with that.
Everybody's familiar with that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Everybody cut your teeth on that.
I found Energy XT. I was like, oh, this is cool. I get this. And so I started off with Energy XT, but then I was writing a song about a year ago on Energy XT, and it just couldn't handle what I was trying to put into it, and it started crashing. And I realized I had reached a ceiling with Energy XT. So that's when I decided to look for something else, and then I found Arter, and I haven't looked back. That one's a beauty.
That's cool. I have another song. Can I play?
Go for it.
Okay.
In the beginning, man created God, and he saw that it was profitable.
I stand, you hate me more. My blasphemies remain ignored. Within your mind I'm burned alive. I'm tortured, damned, and rest deprived. Yet here I stand, you wonder how. I have to ask, where is your God now? I'm beaten, bloody, terrified. Yet here I stand, you hate me more. My blasphemies remain ignored. Within your mind I'm burned alive. I'm tortured, damned, and rest deprived. Yet here I stand, you wonder how. I have to ask, within your mind I'm crucified, I'm beaten, bloody, terrified. Yet here I stand, you hate me more. My blasphemies remain ignored. Within your mind I'm burned alive. I'm tortured, damned, and rest deprived. Yet here I stand, you wonder how. I have to ask, where is your God now?
Okay.
Yeah, the lyrics, man. Inspiration for that.
All right. Well, I'm an atheist.
You don't say.
Yeah, I didn't pick that up at all, right?
I tend to get into a lot of arguments with a lot of very fundamentalist Christians, and I don't back down. So
Purposely or just because?
Yeah, like by proxy.
Yeah.
it might be because I have Asperger's. I don't know.
It doesn't take that. Trust me.
No. Those kind of people get mad at everybody else too. Trust me.
Then I can't let it go, and that's my problem.
What?
But
Go ahead.
yeah, I wrote that at a time where I was getting into a lot of arguments online, whether it was on Facebook or on just any place. It seemed that arguments found me. And so I wrote that song basically about that whole thing about, people telling me I was going to hell. That's kind of like telling an adult that they're not going to get Christmas presents from Santa Claus.
Yeah, except the disappointment is when you find out that Santa Claus is not real compared to when you find out that God is not real is
well, the song
everybody wants Santa Claus back, but God, really, Santa Claus is not real.
It's obvious that that's a statement.
Yeah,
absolutely, and you're driving that statement home. So there's some anger there.
Yeah, even when I'm singing that song to myself, there are times when I'm flipping the bird off at absolutely nobody because it just feels right.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
keeping with the energy. Yeah, it is kind of like a big fuck you kind of vibe to it.
Was there a specific moment that you became an atheist, or was that something that was kind of always ingrained in you as you was growing up?
No, I was actually I was confirmed and baptized as a Methodist back in the Midwest. The Midwest is a very heavy Bible belt.
Mm-hmm. How old was you?
I was 9 at that time, and it wasn't very much longer before I stopped going to church entirely. It seemed like I did that, and I was just like, you know what? Wait a minute. No, this is stupid. I don't want to do this. And so I stopped going to church at that time. But at that time, I didn't really think about atheism or anything like that. I just thought that the whole concept, everything that they were trying to teach me and telling me was the truth, didn't make sense with the natural history books that we read about or any of that. Okay, Noah's Ark. Come on.
Right.
You don't see it, huh? not a Doctor Who fan, huh?
Now, where do you find yourself with all of this, Brian? Are you because I went through this phase with social media where I found myself almost trying to be like some sort of weird crusader for facts and data. And then I gave all of that shit up and decided I'm going to create a podcast where we get to just talk to interesting people about cool shit instead. And that's how this whole podcast idea got started was that. But I mean, does trouble come looking for you, or are you one of those where you kind of feel like when someone puts something up on Facebook or social media that you feel is complete bullshit, you've got to be like the voice of reason and kind of add another viewpoint to that?
There are times where I try to slap my own hand and say, this is not the battle. You just don't do it. But then my hand starts typing.
and then you're committed.
Yeah. Once the hands go, you're going to post it.
Man, what's funny is, and I don't know if this will help you or not, but what sort of broke it for me was when it dawned on me, it's like, okay, look, energy's energy, right? You're going to spend it doing something. Right. And now, do I want to spend energy trying to convince people that I am never going to convince, of something, whatever it is, okay? Or should I turn my energy to do something else that's way more constructive? And that's how I got away. I was just, man, I started unfriending people. I started everything that was giving me any kind of irritation on my social media, dude, I just cut it off like a cancer.
But do you want to get away?
Yeah, but you gotta want it. That's the thing. Yeah,
that's part of the problem. Is
you enjoy the challenge.
It actually inspires me to write music.
Yeah. So there you go. Now
That's nothing wrong with that. I've got a huge, large collection, a whole giant bag full of items that proselytizers have given me over the years.
I've seen it. Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like pamphlets and
kits and pamphlets and books and.
You even have a communion wafer in there somewhere.
I've got some holy water, actually.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. I took it with me to
That's
Wisconsin.
Great.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting, man. I took it into my European Reformation class and was showing people in that class too. It was interesting.
It's quite the eclectic blend of propaganda.
Every once in a while, I still have to throw out a slap. If I see something absolutely I'm just like, are you serious with the send me prayers, please?
Yeah. Thoughts and prayers.
Yeah. How about no?
Oh, I think he's queuing up another song.
All right.
Okay, cool. Yes, this one here.
You definitely use make full use of layering.
Yes. That in fact, that entire song is layer after layer after layer.
And you float them in and out to add dynamics to the track.
Right. That song was inspired from the fact that Fabian found my music and woke me up, basically. Woke me up from a 13-year slumber and put me back into making music again. You
got a lot to say.
What's that?
You got a lot to say then. 13 years. You probably got a lot to say.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like you're really happy to be back in the saddle, so to speak.
I really am. It's something I wish I would have never left, but like I said, scary things can make people stop their tracks.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. So, okay, but you never really left music. You've sort of kept your finger in, whether you're DJing or whatever. You've stayed connected to it, you know.
I can't let go of music.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely no.
So I got to ask, on the DJing side, okay, because that's definitely a part of, your art. But you said you DJ'd in gentlemen's clubs in New Jersey.
Yeah.
That's got to be an experience. Good God.
It pays the bills. That's what that does. Yeah. It's really, it pays the bills, and it basically gives me more practice on my hardware, on like my controller and whatnot, than most nightclub DJs get on their own, unless they're sitting there grinding it out in their homes. And to do it well, it does take practice. It really does. So I feel like every day that I work doing something like that in something mundane such as a gentleman's club is simply practice. My hands just, I don't know, knowing when to do things, when and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's almost like second nature to me at this point.
So, but the scenery isn't bad.
What's that?
I said, but the scenery isn't bad.
For about the first week.
I know, right? I know. Yeah. I worked a gig for a while, believe it or not, for Victoria's Secret catalog. And I walked into shit for like a month. And then after that, you kind of got used to, because they had like 4 foot by 8 foot pictures of the models all over the place in this building. It was insane, right? But yeah, you do. You kind of get numb to it after a while, don't you?
Yeah, you really do. You don't think about it so much, especially once you get to know some of the entertainers and stuff. And you realize most of them anyway are human.
Yeah.
And you get to know them, and you get to know their personalities and who they are. And
yeah, you relate. It's hard when you're relating to them now. So
it's partly that. It's partly also because you do see it several hours a day, 5-6 days a week. So yeah, you don't think about it. You do get very numb to it. But once you get numb to it, that's when you start getting to know the people and getting to realize that they're just people trying to survive in this fucking world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely attracts a very specific type of audience, those places. So the clientele is probably becomes the bigger show at some point, doesn't it?
Clientele is what creeps me out sometimes.
Sure. Yep.
That's the creepiest part of the whole thing is the clientele. It's not the dancers.
No.
It's the clientele.
Sure, man. How did you do the drums in that last one? You said you generally do like 4 or 5 tracks of drums. Like, how do you go about doing that?
Usually, like I said, I'll make a grouping of tracks, which most DAWs can do groupings of tracks these days. Actually, I don't think Energy XT could, but I'll click out 7 tracks and group them all together.
Okay.
And that's going to be my drums. And then I'll label each one of them: kick, snare, hi-hat, high tom, mid tom, floor tom. And then I'll have like cymbals, and then maybe some like just odd percussion of some sort. And then I'll lay each part out as I go, just based off of like a drum beat that I may have in my head.
Okay.
I'll start laying it out then on the keyboard. I'll start with the metronome, and I'll start beating out like the kick drum, and I'll already have the snare, what I want for the snare, going in my head while I'm kicking out the bass drum, the kick drum.
Gotcha.
Then after I've laid down the kick drum, I go back and I record what I had going on with the snare into the snare part. And while I'm doing that, playing the snare part, I've got the hi-hat going on in my head.
Gotcha.
And so then, and it just keeps folding like that. It gets a little complex when you do the toms, because you've got 3 different sets of toms, and those generally have to flow together.
How long does it take you to write an entire song from beginning to end, roughly?
It can take anywhere from a week to, it's taken a month on a single song. It really depends on my mind, on whether or not it's going to cooperate that day.
About roughly how many individual tracks do you end up with on any given song?
Man, I try to keep the track numbers down, but they usually end up going between 25 and 40 tracks.
Right on.
Usually by that time, though, I start going through trying to find the tracks that I don't want to use. I'm just like, oh, I can do without this one.
So it sounds like you take a pretty fundamental structured approach to this. You start with drums, then you probably move to your bass and rhythm. What would be considered that, right? And then then you move through your mid-range track stuff, your pads, and that, and then you're looking at guitars, highlights, and vocals.
Sometimes the vocals do always come last, but as far as the music goes, it could be whatever happens to be playing in my head. It may just be a sound, an effect, and I'll get that down, and then I'll go, okay, now I'm going to start working on like the bass part or something. Sure. It just depends on how my mind decides to work that day, I guess.
All right. Well, what do you think moving forward, right, in the industry and the way things are sort of going? I mean, both of us are all of us here are on the X Factory for a reason, right? And we kind of see that. But moving forward with the industry and everything, where do you kind of see all of this kind of artists being able to create and produce their own music, self-promotion? Where do you think this is just going to continue this way, or do you think there's going to come some sort of convergence ultimately, where we return to that sort of producer model?
I don't think we can ever go back to that. Yeah, I don't think it's possible.
Do you think that model is going to eventually just completely die out?
I think it's mostly broken. I think the major record labels are hanging on to it as best as possible. It makes them feel like they're doing something or whatever. I don't know. But honestly, I think that the music industry in general is starting to move away from that. People are starting to find out they can do things in their own home, that they don't need to pay $500 a day to sit in a music studio somewhere and have somebody tell you, okay, play it back now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, you're right. That's true. Absolutely. But there is something to be said for the experience of engineering. There's a lot because I've never been formally trained in it in any way. So
Right.
a lot of what I learned on running the mixer and stuff, or running my DAW, was all just trial and error. And then I hook up with Eric, who's been formally trained in all this stuff, and he's like, "Oh, you're doing this all completely wrong, and here's why." So yeah, you have the tools, but there's a lot to be said for that person that puts it all together, masters it, makes it all sound good,
Right.
to fit it all together. But yeah, absolutely. People have access in their homes now to stuff that years ago would have just.
The old model's broken.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
And, honestly, long live the king. I think I'm happy to see it go.
Well, it's power to the people for damn sure, right?
Exactly.
Good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's what it is.
To be instantly creative.
Yeah.
That's something that's never been an option before. And I think it's great. But don't get into music if you're wanting to make money.
No.
That's all I can say. You've got to love what you do.
Art, period, I think is you can paint with a much wider brush there. It's kind of the same thing. Yeah. If you're gonna try to be an artist, being filthy rich, it shouldn't be one of your prime motivators.
Yeah.
Or you're gonna be really disappointed.
Oh yeah.
Now, Brian, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What's up?
Given that all of your songs are obviously written for individual specific reasons, like encapsulating certain events and memories and times and things of that nature, is there an overarching idea or philosophy that you try to incorporate in all of your music, or a message that you are trying to convey with everything that you do?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Oddly, yes. Every song is a piece of me. It's an explanation of me. It's an explanation of how my mind works. That's why this album, or the first album, was called Prelude, which is basically an introduction to me. The next album, I haven't really talked to too many people about the title of it yet, but I'll tell you, I'm planning on calling it Chapters. Again, it's going to broaden more on me, on the way my mind works and what I see and what I feel.
Well, you're always evolving as an artist, right? So so then the art must thereby evolve with you, correct?
Yes. And, there's going to be a lot of hard industrial, a lot of metal, industrial metal. It's going to be a lot of goth feel going on. And there's going to be some things that, don't quite fit in with anything I've yet done. Because boxing myself into one type of sound or anything like that is not me, because that's not what music is to me.
Do you have plans for the future, or even ideas of what you might want to do?
As far as
music in particular?
Well, yeah.
Right now I am working on the next album. I personally don't know how many songs I've got ready to go yet on that album. I think Fabian has said that I've got somewhere like 8 or 9 songs already that I didn't realize that I'd been sending him. I send him these stems and he keeps them until we're ready to move on to like vocals and whatnot.
So you're the rainmaker, and he's the guy running around with buckets. Basically, it's kind of how it works with you and him.
He thrives on working on music. If he doesn't work on music, he becomes depressed. He's told me this. So he's got 2 projects of his own, and he's also working with me on post-production of all my music.
Wow.
He's constantly busy. And I believe he's got a side project where he's doing music for an indie video game, which is kind of cool. Yeah, he's every bit like me. That's when you love music, and you have to have it. You have to be working with it.
Yeah. What about the far future? I mean, in terms of things that you're not even working on at this point in time, and anything like that.
Mm.
And in fact, to open that up a little bit broader for you to think upon, not just within the realm of music, are you considering doing anything in the far future, in an artistic sense?
Well, I've always wanted to write cinematic scores.
Ooh, that sounds cool.
I don't know that will ever happen, but if it were ever an option, if somebody said, "Hey, I want you to write a film score for my movie," I'd be grinning from ear to ear. I would love that.
It could happen. That's what Stuart Copeland, the drummer for the Police, does now.
Yeah.
Well, and not only that, with so many independent filmmakers, man, I would think there's boatloads of people out there who are doing indie film stuff that would be looking for somebody to
Or
do cinematic-
documentaries.
or documentaries. Absolutely.
Yeah, if I ever get the chance, if
Well, I guess this is a formal request right here. That's what he's saying. Hey, if you're listening to this and you're doing some independent film or documentaries, give me a call. Traveling musician.
So to speak.
Right.
Traveling through the web.
Yeah, it would definitely be a something that I would be very proud of. It could be a B movie. I don't even care. Bring it on. I will do it.
Right on.
Work. My kid's talking about. I have a very talented child or children, all of them. But my oldest boy is kicking around the idea of doing these. He's an artist, as a graphic artist, and drawing and then doing his own illustration for like a comic book. But it's kids these days, right? But there's something they do where the slide. It's like a slideshow, and then it's narrated by voice actors. Okay, so it's not actual animation, so it's like kind of reading a comic book, but the sound's better, but you have sound kind of
Right.
thing. So it's like a kind of new twist on this. And there's people like him out there that are going to be doing stuff. I can't imagine, man, if you wanted to start doing like stuff like that, that there's got to be people out there looking for people to collaborate with.
So, but yeah, I don't know the first thing about who I should talk to
Right.
about
Yeah.
anything like.
It's this. I guess it's just getting exposed, getting yourself out there and sort of exposed, at least in that sort of idea, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it's crazy how much technology is affecting everything to that end. Where everybody's got an iPhone. 10 years ago, the camera on your iPhone, I don't even think something of that quality even existed yet for digital. Now it's in your phone. So
Right.
there's just so many people doing so many interesting things now that they have access to these tools. That kind of goes back to what we've been talking about, with at-home music production.
Right.
What do you listen to now?
What do I personally listen to?
Yeah.
Oh, man. A huge range of music. In fact, I have a thumb drive in the car that is just for inspiration. It's got everything from the classic industrial songs that everybody knows, off the top of my head, I'm having a hard time thinking about it, but
Well, there must be some classics in there. I would
Yeah.
imagine you got, yeah.
yeah. Plus, I've got Gary Newman's newest album.
Ooh, that's nice.
Crap. That album is incredible.
Yeah.
The guy, Gary Newman Cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm His latest album is amazing.
Yeah.
If you haven't heard it, you're doing yourself a strong disservice.
Have you seen Androids and La La Land?
No.
It's a documentary about him in It's really cool. You should check it out if you have a chance to see it.
I definitely will. Yeah, that's an artist.
Yeah.
He is amazing.
Yeah, and that album was phenomenal, dude. I really liked Exile Extended as well.
Yeah.
He was one of the first real big synth guys that kind of broke out, right?
Yeah.
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 In America.
Yeah.
Well, he had hits in America. I mean, you know, he was British, but you know, there was Kraftwerk was before that, right?
Yeah, Kraftwerk came before that, but I think Kraftwerk was. I don't want to say that they were an influence on Gary Newman, but they may have been. But I think the keyboard itself was Gary Newman's influence when he first came across a synthesizer, and he realized he could make different sounds. That's what his influence was.
Yeah.
And I just think he's amazing.
Yeah, when I think about that music, I certainly don't think about the amazing vocal range of Gary Newman.
No.
That's not what that music's about, right?
Not at all. His music is atmospheric. It's cinematic.
Yeah, I think Metal is my favorite track of all time. Either that or Down in the Park, but I think Metal beats that out.
Yeah, definitely.
I had that on the as the B side of Cars. I had Cars on as a 45, and it was the B side of that, man. And I took that. I carried that thing from Ohio to Texas when I moved.
Oddly, Cars was the only song I didn't like by him ever. Everything else I like.
Really?
Cars was
It's too mainstream. It had
really,
mainstream acceptance.
It wasn't his. It wasn't his normal style, and I don't know. It was very plain.
Yeah, I like a lot of his sparse stuff. I thought it was okay. I mean, it wasn't one of my favorites, but there was other ones I liked a lot less. But he had a wide range of albums, and they were different as you would go through. So
yeah.
You ever listen to Download?
I don't think so. No.
They're an offshoot of Skinny Puppy.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard of that one.
You might like them. They're sort of a techno industrial deal.
No, I definitely love Skinny Puppy.
Yeah,
I couldn't be an industrial musician and not like Skinny Puppy.
Right. Yeah, so you would definitely like Download. If you get a chance to hear an album, I think what you might like the most is an album called The Eyes of Stanley Payne.
Okay.
That's something that sounds very industrial. And then if you go earlier back, it gets more industrial, and if you go forward, it gets more techno kind of.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of bands do that, where they tend to go more techno, more EBM, more dancey, I guess.
Yeah. They kind of got more coherent as they went along too. As they got more techno, they went more coherent. Before, it was very, very discombobulated, but still very beautiful at the same time.
Right.
So, Brian, as we're cruising in here on 2 hours, one of the things I want to make sure I ask you before we wrap up is the DJversion666. Okay, and it seems like there's a story there, and I'd like to kind of get where'd that come from? Obviously, the atheist thing makes sense now that you know that you've kind of elaborated on that. But you said that you were doing it sort of as a poke at other DJs' names or something, right?
Yes. Well, I mean, every DJ has. Okay. Most DJs have pretty silly names. Let's face it. Come on. We come up with these names for ourselves, and it's our personas and whatnot, and when we're on stage mixing. But DJversion666 was kind of a joke in the fact that the gentlemen's clubs,
right?
I was always known for playing more rock than anything else. And so people started calling me the God of Rock and this, that, and the other. And one DJ happened to call me DJ666, and I was like, wait a minute. And I said, version 666 sounds funnier.
Right.
But, and there apparently was already a DJ666 out there somewhere. I don't know. But yeah, so I decided DJversion666 was perfect because it was a tongue-in-cheek type of jab at everybody.
Yeah, and I guess I should clarify that I wasn't inferring that atheists are somehow associated with that moniker. I wasn't implying that, so don't flame me in the comments later.
Not at all. No, I gladly accept that. I find the name hilarious in the fact that if anybody takes it seriously, especially,
they're missing the point, right?
Yeah, especially a Christian. I've had people try to proselytize to me on Facebook because of my DJversion666 name on the DJversion666 page.
Right.
I was just like, you're kidding me, right?
Right.
Nope.
You are so barking up the wrong tree. Well, man, like I said, we're coming up here on 2 hours. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to kind of make sure we got out? Obviously, sounds like you're working on a new album. When that comes out, we need to have you back so you can we can talk about that and listen to some tracks off of that. But is there anything that we're missing?
The only thing that I would have to say to anybody out there is get away from the formulaic pop music, the formulaic rock music, the stuff that's on the radio. Listen to the stuff that people are really producing, the independent artists, because man, that's where the music's coming from. That's where it's coming from the heart. It's not formulaic. It's not something that's molded by a PR person in some office somewhere. It's real. And that's the one thing that I really want to drive home. It doesn't even have to be my music. It can be anybody's. As long as if it's independent, it's coming from the heart and you know it.
Totally agree. Absolutely.
Well, there you go, folks. A little bit of wisdom from our friend Brian Stewart. We look forward to having him back on the show later. Please hit the subscribe and like button down there at the bottom. And thanks for listening. We'll catch you all next time.
Bye.